everybody. This is Mike with On Point Preparedness. This is going to be a pretty important episode. I've been waiting to do this one for quite some time. Over the past maybe month or so, I've been telling you all I was going to do a video about this whole phenomenon or this whole term that's being brought up called the deep church or the deep state church. For those of you who have seen my videos over the last 6 months, I've been showing how there's a purposeful exposure of the deep state, that Satan is literally wanting to expose the totalitarian regimes of the NWO, of this cabal, all the bad people. He's just trying to shove it in the world's face so that the world rises up in rebellion. There is going to be chaos, and out of that chaos, the world is going to look for a savior. The world is going to look for a solution. And that is where the real beast system comes in. That's where the real delusion comes in. That's what the Revelation is really talking about. The beast system is not one that forces people to worship it. The beast system is one that is from the enemy that makes people think that it's saving them, that it's offering them something good, peace and safety, all these different things. And so while we've covered a lot of this phenomenon of the deep state being purposefully exposed, I want to switch gears just a little bit and show you how the deep church, the true atrocious or the true atrocities of false Christianity are also being purposefully exposed by the enemy. I believe that these two things are going to be pretty much in sync. They may happen somewhat in parallel, that whenever this grand exposure happens of the deep state, the deep church is going to go along with it. What I mean by the deep church is particularly Pope Francis and a lot of the leftist, Marxist types of ideals that he's bringing in. For quite some time, I was one who was a proponent that Pope Francis was the false prophet of Revelation and that he was going to lead the one world religion. You can find my videos that I've done on that in the past, but I do strongly believe, and I believe that this is discernment, that may actually not be the case. And so I'm proposing, these opinions and these theories and evidence to support them, to keep our minds open for the possibility that he actually gets taken down. And again, why would he be taken down? It's for the purposeful chaos. It's for the order out of chaos. You can imagine that if the deep church, again, true evils, a true exposure, if these things are truly put out into the public eye, there is going to be a complete loss of faith in organized religion. And without that, I think people would feel pretty hopeless. And I think that's a stepping stone that the Antichrist is going to use to bring people into a new reality, if you want to call it that, where they worship the beast system and they worship him. Something that is rooted in Gnosticism in terms of trusting in the knowledge of yourself, something that goes all the way back to the deception that was in the Garden of Eden. So that is the topic today. We're going to be talking about the deep church and how it's currently being exposed. Now, I had talked about these things in the last live stream a couple days ago, and it just so happened today, an amazing piece of evidence just fell in my lap. This was published on January 4th. I've covered Archbishop Vigano and some of his letters to Trump, where he's very vocal in saying that, President Trump, you're the only thing that stands in the way of evil. You're our last hope. He pretty much says everything that every conspiracy theorist wants to hear about the NWO, the cabal, Satanists, and secret hiding, etc., etc. He said all these things, and what you saw come out of that was Christian conspiracy theorists who don't know the Word of God well. They started gravitating towards this man, even though Catholicism represents a false gospel. And so it's starting to lead to this false ecumenicism. It's already starting to suck people in. That because he is against Pope Francis and because he's against evil and because he's for Trump and Trump represents the light, people are just going hook, line, and sinker and starting to have this ecumenical relationship with Catholicism. and it's dangerous. You also see people like Jack Hibbs. I do believe that Jack Hibbs had even reposted Archbishop Vigano's comments on this. And so it's a complete travesty where people are favoring freedom and liberty in terms of exposing tyranny so much that they forgot about protecting the gospel because they're promoting Catholic figures, high up Catholic figures. It's just a very, very dangerous thing. Well, Archbishop Vigano was now just recently interviewed by Bannon. If you know Bannon, he's very close to the Trump administration. He's actually a pretty polarizing figure as well. I've covered him where he actually was going after some of the Obama administration officials and actually calling for their heads to be. And also, I didn't cover this, but Rudy Giuliani has also talked about this for people. Don't know whether that's prophetic or not, but is pretty concerning that those things are going on. And so he just had this interview with Bannon on the 4th, right after I had just done my live stream with you guys a couple days ago, talking about how this is a reality and this is very, very close to us. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go look at this interview, and we're going to read through some of the things he's been talking about verbatim. But first, for anyone who didn't catch my last live stream, I do want to just show you a couple snippets from that. Let me just go ahead and switch on over here to the screen share. This is what we covered a couple days ago, and you're seeing this term pop up some more. So Mark Taylor, who is someone that I do not recommend at all, he's completely prophesying about Trump and him being the man of God, and the people he affiliates with are not people that I would suggest that you you get your teaching from. He says deep state church leaders like Beth Moore, and Beth Moore, I do not support her as well, but she called out Trumpism. And so because she was anti-Trump idolatry, he's saying that she's part of the deep state church. So we're seeing this deep state church language come out from him. We're seeing it come out from Archbishop Vigano. We're seeing it come out from Cardinal Burke. He may not have used those exact words, but the inference is there. And so there's your deep state church starting to spread. You're also starting to see Pope Francis really reveal his true colors. I mean, he's been revealing them for quite some time. Many Christian truthers have been exposing that for a while now. But as I mentioned in my last live stream, he's pairing up now with Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and all these big banksters, and it's just totally aligning with the left. I mean, even in the Catholic Church, they're talking about a schism, and there's so many cardinals and bishops that think he's a communist supporter, and they're talking about schisms in the Catholic Church. It's not hidden. That's the thing. Just with the deep state church and how it's being purposefully exposed as being evil, and all the lockdowns from this whole crisis that we're in. The same thing's happening here with the Catholic Church. You can see this tweet here. Vatican enters into global alliance with Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and Ford Foundation, where they're supporting, this Ford is a supporter of abortion rights, gender ideology. The Pope has made several comments which the Vatican has tried to backtrack about LGBTQ rights, things like that. And so again, he's showing his card purposely, and it's stirring up strife. And at some point, this is going to be exposed, because as I've shown you, many cardinals, including Cardinal Burke, they're warning about the Great Reset, right? As I mentioned in my last live stream, what we're seeing right now is the clash of two evils. There is the NWO cabal evil side, which is Bill Gates, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, banksters, Soros, International Monetary Fund, UN, all that stuff. And the Pope, they're all on the left. And then on the right, you have tons of world religions. You have Trump. You have, again, sort of this schism in the Catholic Church where many are siding with Trump. Particularly here, Cardinal Burke is warning about the left and the Great Reset. And in 2017, this article from The Guardian said that Pope Francis's harshest critics, again, within the Catholic Church, are aligning themselves with Trump and his acolytes around the world, including Matteo Salvini. I don't know who that is. But anyways, I spoke about my last live stream about how there was a lot of tension when Pope Francis met Trump back in 2017, and Trump gave him a lotus flower statue, which lotus flowers in the occult mean rebirth unto enlightenment. And the statue is literally entitled "Rising Above." And there's articles. If you look that up, lotus flower rising above, and you look at this Trump statue that was given to Pope Francis, it talks about Trump's infatuation with the lotus. It's pretty interesting. We're going to go into that just a little bit further. But again, many people, you're starting to see this divide between Pope Francis and Trump. And if you're not with Trump, you're part of the deep state church. So now I'm definitely not supporting Pope Francis. I definitely think he's deep church, if you will. But the thing is, innocent Christians who are warning about these two evils, we are going to get lumped in there as well. As you can see with this tweet from Mark Taylor. He's not mentioning anything about Beth Moore's teachings or problems regarding the word of the God. The fact that she challenged Trump and talked about the potential idolatry of Trump and Trumpism, well, suddenly she's deep state church. Now, that's what's going to happen to me. It's going to happen to you if you talk out about these things. All right, so that was a real quick recap on what I had covered on my last live stream. But let's look at this interview with Bannon, because this is pretty huge. And I've highlighted a couple sections for you. And after we go through this, I also want to tie this back into the miracle of Fatima, which is something that I covered. When did I cover this? Back in 2016. So we're going to look at a video that I did in December 26, 2016. This actually all relates to the miracle of Fatima, where there was this apparent miracle apparition of Mary in front of 70,000 people. And also Mary, again, this is all false. I'm not condoning this at all. These are demonic entities parading around as Mary. Garabandal is another place in Spain where there was an apparition of Mary. And we're going to look at what these apparitions told. And interestingly, they told little children all this. What they told the children and how it relates to what's going on right now. It's quite interesting. And so I do believe that these demonic entities were feeding information that a lot of these people in the Catholic Church are still propagating. It's incredibly interesting to see the parallels. So let's go ahead and get on into this interview. Again, we're looking at Bannon interviewing Archbishop Vigano. So Bannon says, now that the Vatican has renewed its insidious secret agreement with China, a deal which you have repeatedly condemned as promoted by Bergoglio, again, that's Pope Francis, with the assistance of McCarrick, what can the children of light of the Great Awakening concretely do to undermine this unholy alliance with this brutal communist regime? That is some amazing wording. Okay, I've talked to you guys about unclean spirits and how people will adopt certain language if they're influenced by the same kinds of spirits. And here we're seeing, again, this term, the children of light of the Great Awakening. What can we do to take down Pope Francis, Bergoglio? What can we do? And this communist regime. Remember this communist regime, this brutal communist regime. This is what patriots all across America and the whole Stop the Steal movement that we're seeing all across the world, there's going to be a great global takeover of communism, this totalitarian regime, which is the beast system. Remember that, because that ties directly into what these demonic entities were talking about in the miracle of Fatima and the miracle, quote unquote, of Garabandal. So, Vigano's reply to that is the dictatorship of the Chinese Communist Party is allied to the global deep state. On the one hand, so that together they can attain the goals that they have in common. On the other hand, because the plans for the Great Reset are an opportunity to increase the economic power of China in the world, beginning with the invasion of national markets. The complicity of Bergoglio's deep church, I'm just going to say Pope Francis from now on in case people don't know that name, from Pope Francis's deep church, in this infernal project has deprived Chinese Catholics of the indefectible defense that the papacy had always been for them. I'm going to just, before we start looking at, let's just go through this last quote from the Archbishop. It would be an irreparable disaster if Joe Biden, who is heavily suspected of being complicit with the Chinese dictatorship, would be designated as President of the United States. Okay, I just need to hold there for just a second because I want to talk to you guys about really weird language that's coming out from Trump. This whole time, I'm starting to notice this more and more, and perhaps now that I, bring this up, maybe you will have noticed this as well. Trump is very much straining, and he's very much putting focus on calling the whole virus thing the CCP virus. If you notice, it's almost as if he's not even talking about the actual virus now. That's sort of coded in a weird sort of way. This is all directed at China. With everything that we're seeing that I talked about in my last video with regards to the fraudulent activity, right? If you're following those leads and you're looking at the research, they're actually all pointing to China as a deep state actor in terms of influencing those results. And so what I believe is, when Trump is talking about the China virus, the China pandemic, and he's also talking about this vaccine, the vaccine's going to end the China virus. Some people have inferred that he's not necessarily talking about the virus, but he's legitimately talking about the deep state, and he's talking about China's influence over the world. And so it's this China virus, this China deep state virus that's influencing and taking over the whole world. And he and others are the cure, and he's going to wipe it out. I'll probably do a video just to analyze that a little bit more, because right now, just with me saying it off the top of my tongue like that, it sounds a little bit conspiratorial. But I'll put something together for you and show that Trump is, in his tweets, he's quoting certain words to put more stress on them, and it's just strange again. And you see it in these quotes from Archbishop Vigano as well. He's stressing Pope Francis's relationship with China, as well as the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, all the deep state actors, but particularly on China. China is going to have a really big role to play in everything that gets exposed at some point in time. Anywho, let's continue. Here's Bannon's next question. You have been very confident that God desires a Trump victory in order to defeat the forces of evil inherent in the globalists' Great Reset. What would you say to convince the naysayers who are ambivalent to the idea that this is a momentous battle between the children of light and the children of darkness? And Vigano says, I simply consider who Trump's adversary is and his numerous ties, again, to China, the deep state, and the advocates of globalist ideology. I think of his intention to condemn us all to wear masks, as he has candidly admitted. Again, just the focus on China, the focus on globalism. Again, the whole mask thing comes up as well. Later on, it just basically says that, yeah, if Trump doesn't get in, if people are ambivalent to these forces of evil, he basically goes on to keep on saying, Kamala Harris, Biden, they're going to put you in chains. They're going to put you into this totalitarian regime. And you know what? That probably would happen to some degree, to be honest. It's not that this is a full out lie. It's you have to just be careful about the people that are trying to liberate you from this are also going to put you into spiritual bondage. That's why this is the clash of two evils. It's literally like, just stay out of it. Just stay out of it, because both sides are bad. And we need to just not be so gravitated towards Vigano and Trump and all these people simply because they're upholding a moral standard. Okay? All right, next question from Bannon. You seem to suggest that the Trump administration could be instrumental in helping to return the church to a pre-Francis Catholicism. So again, it's not that this Archbishop Vigano is literally coming to Jesus in the right way. It's all about, we just need to get rid of the liberal side of Catholicism. We'll see this later. It's still a false gospel. I mean, again, the Catholic Church murdered millions, some estimates are millions of Christians for heresy because they wouldn't bow down to the Roman Catholic Church during the Reformation or prior to the Reformation. Anyways, he says, how, in getting to a pre-Francis Catholicism, how does the Trump administration accomplish that? And how can American Catholics work to save the world from this globalist reset? So again, it's still focused on maintaining Catholicism and saving the world. Again, we saw that video in the last live stream about save America, save the world. A lot of people are literally turning to Trump as a type of idol in terms of saving them. And they're really not looking to God. Vigano replies, there's some things here. He talks more about the Great Reset, but he says, thus, on one hand, we have the Trump administration and the traditional values that it holds in common with those of Catholics. Again, this is all about moralism. Trump upholds the moral standard. The left upholds Antifa and, all the terrible things that we're seeing them do, and abortion and all this other stuff. It's all based on moralism, which is not the gospel. These are all dead works. On the other hand, we have the deep state of the self-styled Catholic Joe Biden, who is subservient to the globalist ideology and its perverse anti-human, anti-Christic, infernal agenda. In order to put an end to the deep church and restore the Catholic Church, the extent of the involvement of the leaders of the church within the Masonic, this is key, within the Masonic globalist project will have to be revealed. The nature of the corruption and crimes that these men have carried out, thereby making themselves vulnerable to blackmail, just as it happens in similar ways in the political field to members of the deep state, beginning with Biden himself. Thus, it is to be hoped that any proof of such crimes that is in the possession of the secret services would be brought to light, especially in relation to the true motives that led to the resignation of Benedict and the conspiracies underlying the election of Pope Francis, thereby permitting the expulsion of the mercenaries who have seized control of the church. American Catholics still have time to denounce this global subversion and stop the establishment of the new order. Let them think about what sort of future they want for coming generations and of the destruction of society. So a couple things that I just want to make note here. Let's see. The Masonic Globalist Project. This is something that I've covered a while back. If you look at the history of popes, and perhaps I will bring up another article here so you can see, there is a long-standing rift, a war even, between the Freemasons and the Jesuits within the Catholic Church. And I believe Pope Francis had called for a purging of all Freemasons from the Knights of Templar. Again, I cover this in other videos. I forget all the details, but there's literally a war going on in just a vying for type of power control type of war within the Catholic Church itself between Jesuits and the Masons. And so Pope Francis, people know he's a Jesuit, but here it's almost inferring that he's working with the Masons. But this is another snare. This is truthfully another snare where a lot of truthers, a lot of Christian truthers who know about Freemasons and globalist ideology within that faction, they'll hear these words of an archbishop talking about the Masonic globalist project, and they'll say, wow, this guy gets it. He's on our side. And people are, again, they're getting snared, hook, line, and sinker, because this man is speaking the same lingo. Unfortunately, my highlights on this article had disappeared, but this is another person, and this was actually posted here on January 21st, 2020, when communism returns. Again, this is all about communism. He speaks about the Lady of Fatima. He speaks about Garabandal, Spain. But in this article, see here again, here you see the Freemasonic compass and G. And he says that this Roman Empire, or this new totalitarian communist regime, has not disappeared, but has been controlled by secret societies, most especially Freemasons, in order to achieve their end, global dominion. And so, yeah, there's lots of people, not just Archbishop Vigano, but there's lots of people within the Catholic Church starting to talk about the danger of Freemasonry and their attempts for this, again, global communist agenda. This is all going to be key as we start to look into the quote-unquote miracles of Garabandal and Fatima. Anyways, going on with just a couple more things from this interview that I found noteworthy. Bannon says, "You have repeatedly warned that the deep state and deep church have colluded to plot in various ways to overthrow Benedict as well as President Trump. Besides Theodore McCarrick, who else is behind this infernal alliance, and how do Catholics undermine and expose it?" So again, here you see the link, right? I've been talking about deep state exposure, how it's purposefully being very totalitarian right now so that people rise up against it. And, here you have Bannon saying that deep church and deep state are essentially colluding together in parallel. So it's likely that one's going to fall right after the other, or they're going to fall together. What Bannon talks about is basically how to bring down the deep state and the deep church. I really didn't find any of this noteworthy, but if you look at the nationalpulse.com, you can go ahead and read through this whole thing yourself. But the other parts that I have highlighted here that I found were noteworthy before we conclude this segment is Bannon says, I think this is Bannon, right? Yeah, this is Bannon. He says, "If we can prove ourselves strong in facing this trial, if we know how to hold ourselves anchored to the rock of the church," the rock of the church, the Catholic Church. Catholic Church ain't the rock. Jesus Christ is the rock. Also, not Mary, as you'll see what's concluded in this interview. "Anchored to the rock of the church, without allowing ourselves to be seduced by false Christs and false prophets." That would be, they would call me a false prophet. They would call the true Christ a false Christ. "The Lord will permit us to see, at least for now, the defeat of the assault of the children of darkness against God and men." And here you go. "He has placed his most holy mother at our side, Mary, the Queen of Victories and the help of Christians. We invoke her faithfully during these difficult days, confidently certain of her intervention." Again, this is all Mary idolatry worship. Again, this isn't Archbishop Vigano coming to the truth. This isn't Bannon coming to the truth of Jesus Christ. This is all about moralism. Let's depose Pope Francis and his Marxist, communist, leftist ideologies. Let's win over and take down the deep church. Let's win over and take out the deep state. And we are going to restore morality throughout the world with the help of Mary. Again, this is not truth. And yet people are falling for it and sharing. I bet you, once you guys watch this video, you're going to see this thing everywhere. I guarantee you. Because the first two letters from Archbishop Vigano just went viral everywhere. Again, Jack Hibbs, lots of other, prominent pastors all sharing this stuff. You're going to see this one. I mean, with all the language talking about the Great Reset and the deep state and the deep church and all this, you're going to see this one, definitely. Anywho, moving on. They talked a lot about communism. Okay? And also, the Chinese Communist Party was in there a whole bunch as well. The miracles of Fatima and the miracles, and these aren't miracles, these are demonic entities, and the miracle of Garabandal, they were all apparitions of Mary. And this apparition of Mary, which is a demonic entity, posing as Mary, gave warnings to the church, end times warnings. And it also, the miracle of Fatima, this entity also gave warnings back sometime around World War II as well, talking about Russia. If Russia does not follow my voice and worship me, again, this is the entity saying, worship Mary, which is completely false in the Bible. We're not to worship anything other than God. It says that unless you do this, you're going to fall into the hand of communism. That's actually what both of these entities say in both of these miracles during the end times. There are quote-unquote prophecies by these demonic entities for the end times, which say signs of the tribulation is global communism. And so you're seeing, especially from Vigano, you're seeing them, whether they're consciously repeating the words from Fatima and Garabandal, or they're just being swayed themselves by unclean spirits. They're all, and actually the world at large, you see all these Christians supporting this whole totalitarian beast system. They're all actually aligning with these false prophecies from demonic entities from Garabandal and Fatima. Let's go ahead and just take a look at some of these here. So we'll start with Garabandal. Okay, Garabandal, communism. This is an interview, I believe, with one of the people that saw the apparition, Mary Lawley. Our Lady spoke several times about communism. And this is 1978, mind you. I don't remember how many times, but she said that a time would come when it would seem that communism has mastered or engulfed the whole world. Sounds interesting. Sounds relatable to what you're hearing everywhere now, including from Archbishop Vigano. Mary also says, regarding what the apparition had told her, they summarized, she says, it was all related to communism and what is going to happen in the church and to the people, because all these things are going to have repercussions amongst the people. When the church suffers confusion, the people are going to suffer too. Some priests who are communists will create such confusion that people will not know right from wrong. So again, this is about communism infiltrating the Catholic Church. That's exactly what Archbishop Vigano is talking about, that there's a deep church, that there's infiltrators within the church rooted in Freemasonry, and how we need to basically get them out, sniff them out and get them all out. Another interview with Mary Lawley in 1982. Question, do you remember what the Blessed Mother said about the communist tribulation that is to precede the warning? The warning is something from Fatima. She says it would look like communists would have taken over the whole world, and it would be very hard to practice religion or for priests to say Mass, etc., etc. What do we see happening? Yes, there is some persecution where we see in the States and elsewhere where freedom of religion is not being able to be practiced. However, a lot of it, and I've covered this in the past, the people that are making it up or getting up to the front of the stage and claiming the persecution, a lot of them are Catholics. And again, we see Trump and Melania both going to Catholic worship service, and they're also talking about Mary in terms of some of their big events. Again, Catholics are taking the stage on this one. Let's go down here. Another person that I think saw this apparition in 1979, Jacinta. Do you recall anything about the Great Tribulation, communism? Yes, it was an invasion. Well, something that was a great evil in which communism played a great part. But I no longer remember which countries or what region was stricken. The Blessed Virgin insisted in telling us to pray that it be averted. That is a key thing here. Pray that it be averted. Remember, I've been talking about a false revival. So many people, a lot of the NAR false prophets, a lot of false Christian teachers, they're talking about how there's going to be an upcoming great move of God. There's going to be a revival like we haven't seen before. All these people are saying Trump is, at the very last moment, God's going to raise Trump. He's going to revert the election. He's going to save us from all these communist infiltrators, all this stuff. And this is exactly what Fatima and Garabandal were talking about in these quote unquote false prophecies, that if you pray, these things will be averted. And I think that's part of the delusion. People, and it's not just going to be. I don't think it's going to be like that. It's not going to be this instantaneous thing. Oh, shoot. Actually, I'm not even sharing my screen here. Apologies about that. Well, I hope you guys were following along with some of the words here. Lost my train of thought. Yeah, anyways, that'll come to me. Oh, I remember now. People think, especially in the Q camp, maybe next time I'll remember to screen share again. A lot of people in the Q camp, and Q is total cult. I'm not suggesting you look into them, and if you're into that stuff, I suggest you get out. But people in the Q camp, they have this ideal scenario where there's going to be 10 days of darkness and Trump is going to have a military precision operation to take down all the deep state actors across the world, and then it's going to be great. It's going to, it's going to be a revival. I don't think it's going to work that well. As I mentioned in my last live stream, you have to understand, again, this clash of two evils, incredibly powerful people on either sides. And I sort of mentioned this to you as well, right? Where there is definitely evidence of fraudulent things, and the media is saying absolutely none. There's none exists at all. And they're all in concert with one another. So you have all the media forces together. You have many people all throughout the U.S. government sort of covering things up. You have China state actors potentially involved, Russia involved in some way. And if people are going to get exposed, and it's going to be, if they get exposed, it's going to be at a very high level, like a very, very high level, where penalties for that type of thing are really bad. They are not going to go down without a fight. And so I don't believe it's going to be this wonderful, easy turnover. Again, I think that things are going to be exposed, and these people that do not want to go to jail or do not want to get put on some type of D row, if you know what I mean, they're going to use every single card and every single power that they have to fight. And unfortunately, I think the world's going to get caught in the middle of this. And I think that's where you have this order out of chaos, that the world is going to go through a very chaotic time. And then there's going to be a lot of people fighting for the moralistic right side. And then at some point, this Antichrist savior comes in. A lot of people, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a full-on futurist. There's some different perspectives about the end times. Some people are preterists, thinking it has already happened, which I sternly disagree with. There's some people that hold a view of historicism, saying that the works of Revelation are from the time when John wrote them all the way up through today. I believe that in part. And then there's futurism, which says that they're all going to happen in the past. And the people that don't like futurism say that that was something made up by the Catholic Church to completely dissuade the church away from calling the Roman Catholic Church heretical and whatnot. A lot of that is based on just one Catholic man's potential lies. And so you just have to look at the season that we're in. There's some things within the futurism that are literally playing out right now. And so we can't just be blind to the fact that there's legit stuff happening at this moment. But anyways, there's going to be huge battles because people don't want to get taken down. And it's going to take some time, I think, for us to get to the point where we may see Antichrist and some of the other things portrayed in Revelation. Anywho, yeah, so here's the last part where we left off at, where this person was saying, do you recall anything about the Great Tribulation, communism? And they're talking about, again, it was an invasion. And these difficult events will take place before the warning, because the warning itself will take place when the situation will be at its worst. Now, we're going to talk about the warning here in a little bit. But that's just some of the things I had from Garabandal. I didn't want to look into it too much, but you get the gist. That this is all about, number one, there's going to be this great attempt at a communist takeover of the entire world. And the way to avoid it or avert it is for us to all pray to Mary. That's pretty much it. That the quote-unquote Blessed Mother wants us all to kneel and pray to her, and will avert this terrible thing. And, I think we're going to see a little bit of that here, where people are definitely praying for this great revival and it's going to happen. But no, there's not going to be a version of the entire crisis that comes afterwards, because, again, people are going to fight. People in very high, powerful positions on either side of these two evils are going to, literally fight to the death. Anywho, here's the Fatima, the miracle of Fatima, and you can see it pretty much says the same thing. It says, were these visions and predictions real? The most recent pontiffs seem to think so. What is the peace plan from heaven? Stop offending God with sin. Pray the rosary daily, which has 52 Hail Marys on it. Offer prayers and sacrifices of reparation, including the devotion of the 5 first Saturdays. Consecrate ourselves to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Wear the brown scapular. Stuff disgusts me because I used to be a Catholic way back when. Anywho, what happens if we don't do these things? Our Lady of Fatima warned, if people do not heed her warnings, there will be wars, famines, persecution of the church, and various nations will be annihilated. And despite all has happened in the world since, the Fatima experts think the worst is still to come, if people do not fulfill Our Lady's request at Fatima. This demonic entity which required worship from people. It forced people to kneel down to them. And actually, the children that it revealed itself to in this video that I, again, covered back in 2016. If you want to watch that, just scroll back through my videos. And both the Garabandal and the Fatima miracles, this demonic entity actually put the children in a comatose state. It's really messed up, and it's all related back to sun worship. If you guys want to look at this just for a taste of what this really represents. But anyways, I find this incredibly interesting that we're seeing these prophecies. They're really not prophecies. It's basically the enemy sort of showing their hand in terms of what they're wanting to do. Those prophecies, if we want to call it that, from Fatima and Garabandal are literally what the whole world is following right now. It's literally what Archbishop Vigano is essentially talking about, that this global great takeover of communism, NWO totalitarian regime is coming, and we need to pray to Mary, and we need to fight, patriots need to fight for Trump, and Trump is going to save the world, and he's going to take it all down for us, and he's going to lead us to victory. All this stuff. And I just want to say one more thing. I've been saying it a whole bunch of times on the show. Jesus repeatedly in the Bible told the Pharisees, and he told people that didn't believe him. He said, having eyes you do not see, having ears you do not hear. People with hard hearts cannot discern spiritual truths because Jesus won't let them discern spiritual truths. Then why do we think that people who are in the New Age, that people that are involved in Roman Catholicism, like this Archbishop Vigano, and so many more like him, are correctly discerning the situation? The whole there's not many people talking about how this whole thing is false, that we shouldn't pursue this whole Trump idolatry, and we need to be very careful about the purposeful exposure of evil. There's not a whole bunch of people talking about this, but tons of Christians are running to, again, Archbishop Vigano's comments and Jack Hibbs supporting him, and a lot of the other Christians who are talking about patriotism and all this stuff. And the mark of the beast is the vaccine, and there's going to be a global totalitarian takeover, and that's the beast system. Again, it's the New Agers that are promoting this. It's Catholics that are promoting this, all this stuff. They do not stand on spiritual truth. So what makes us think that they're actually telling the truth and that this is the real thing? God is not giving them truth. But yet it's so easy for us to believe that because it's being made so apparent. It's being made so purposely apparent by the enemy because he wants us to believe that. Again, Satan is an angel of light. He's going to come as an angel of light when things are at its worst. It is not this terrible totalitarian rule where he forces people to worship, because again, people want their freedom, people want knowledge, people want love, peace, and happiness. People don't like to wear masks. People don't like to have forced vaccinations. People would definitely not like a forced chip in their hand. It's not going to happen. There's definitely going to be threats of this. We already see in terms of the vaccine front, there's already tons of articles saying there's going to be mandatory vaccinations. You're not going to be able to fly. You're not going to be able to do this or that. You're not even going to be able to sleep without your vaccine. Yeah, they're going to try that. But the world at large, again, because we see even with mask compliance, the whole world, there's already protests and riots about that. People standing in the streets, even church leaders are saying, "Rip off your mask. Let's go. Let's rebel. Let's riot." It's it's just total rebellion, and we're a lot of people are just feeding into it, and it's not the beast system, and we're not conquering the beast system through these actions. Anywho, I'll get off my soapbox and keep on moving on here. All right. Last thing that I want to cover, because we're already at 46 minutes, and I know you guys like shorter videos, but it's a little bit difficult with all this info. I just want to show you again some of the statements from Trump and how he's leading us into the age of Aquarius. Okay, so let me pull some things up here on the screen for you. I want to show you a tweet from Donald Trump. This is July 27th, 2020. And I'll remember to screen share this time. Oh, Trump says, probably about Biden, yep, would destroy our American cities and worse. If sleepy Joe Biden, the puppet of the left, ever won, markets would crash and cities would burn. Our country would suffer like never before. And here's the key sentence. We will beat the virus soon. Again, I don't think he's really talking about the virus. He's talking about the CCP virus. He's talking about communism. He's talking about the deep state. We will beat the deep state soon and go on to the golden age, better than ever before. The golden age is the age of Aquarius. And this was from the Telegraph. And it says that according to astrologers, the age of Aquarius is on December 21st. It heralds the start of something called the Great Conjunction, the time when the two largest planets in the solar system, Jupiter and Saturn, align in the air sign of Aquarius, the first time in 200 years. Let me look at another article here. What is the age of Aquarius? What these 5 astrologers want you to know about it. An astrological age shifts about every 2150 years, 2,150 years, when the Earth's rotation moves into a new zodiac sign around the spring equinox. There's some debate about when the age of Pisces ends and the true age of Aquarius begins, but considering the massive transits that happened in 2020, a common hypothesis is that we truly entered into the beginning of 2021, this age of Aquarius. For some evidence, note that on the upcoming winter solstice, December 21st, 2020, Jupiter and Saturn conjoin in the sign of Aquarius with the Great Conjunction, and also 7 celestial bodies moved into Aquarius in February of 2021. So, again, you've heard that this conjunction was the first in 800 years. This other article said 200 years, and now this one's saying 2,150 years, that we are now going into the golden age, the age of Aquarius, this new age thing that all the new agers, you look at their channels, they're all heralding in this time when their saviors come, the Galactic Federation, all this stuff that I've covered before. It's really weird. Remember this too. I covered this in the Great Awakening video almost half a year ago, where Melania comes into the Age of Aquarius song, and even the commentators like, this is a weird choice of song. Let's just have a listen.
We're not sure why they picked this song. For Melania Trump's entrance, this astrological Taurus flashed a peace sign. Someone tweeted, "This is the dawning of something, but don't know about a..."
Melania's walk on music is Age of Aquarius. How odd. This is the dawning of something. Oh, yeah. You think this is all coincidence? It's definitely not. If you look at my Great Awakening video, there's a lot more than this. There's a lot more things that Trump has said, more than this, and a lot of things Melania has done, which is all signaling that we are indeed in the end times. That there is this dawning of a new time period, and I don't know if it starts to crash this year or not. I have my hypothesis that January is going to be pretty tumultuous. Again, just from a secular point of view, if you just know what's going to happen on the 6th. I don't think everything's going to drop on the 6th, but I think it's going to be the beginning. Who knows? Who knows what the heck's going to happen on the 6th? No one really knows. I've tried to follow all the different groups. I've tried to look at the alphabet people. I've tried to look at, political pundits and all this. No, no one has any idea what's going to happen. But hopefully I've showed you enough evidence that something big is going down. Something big. And again, it is the clash of two evils. And it seems like this is the rub point. January is the rub point because it is all about the election. And I said there is so much momentum about this movement, the whole fraudulent stuff and taking a stand. There is so much momentum behind this that I don't see it just, petering away. Like, oh, well, yeah, Trump gets on stage. Sorry, guys. Second place is good too. Maybe we'll get him. Maybe we'll get him in 4 years later down the road. What changes then? Nothing really changes. Like right now, you've got a lot of momentum. And so this stuff is legitimately coming to a head here in January. We have no idea exactly how it all pans out. We have no idea if it all happens like in a day or, things get postponed and dragged out to the beginning of February. There's some interesting things that I saw about February 1st. But it's totally going down now. And we're totally in the last days. These are totally the birth pains. And, unfortunately, not sugarcoating anything, we need to go through some bad things. And it's all going to be about this war between two opposing powers of evil. And I think that once that chaos starts to tamp down, and potentially we do see, this Antichrist figure come onto the scene. I do believe in a literal Antichrist. I think that's when the definitive Christian persecution begins. Yeah. Right now it's the beginning, I think, is just going to be chaos and tribulation for the whole world. But I think after this is all done, somehow it's all going to be, it's all going to turn on Christians at some point. But we will just see. We'll just have to play this one step at a time, because as I mentioned, I don't think anyone has 100% clarity on the end times. I think that God is revealing things as we go through time. Just as none of the apostles had 100% clarity on everything Jesus was telling them. A lot of stuff came to their remembrance, after his death, and the Holy Spirit gave them conviction. I think as we get closer and closer to some of these events, we'll all be given greater clarity and discernment. That's my prayer. I hope you pray for that as well, and that the Lord protects us from delusion, because it is just absolutely rampant. So we will keep an eye out for the whole deep state church exposure, as well as the whole deep state exposure, and see exactly what gets exposed. But I'm pretty sure it's definitely happening. I did intend to do a teaching video tonight, but just because of this Bannon interview with the Archbishop, I postponed that to, I think, Friday. So I think my next video will be on Friday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be talking about being a little bit too discerning, hyper-vigilant discernment, and how it can actually lead to discerning yourself unto isolation, where you find yourself completely isolated from the body of Christ because of your discernment, whether it was correct or not. So that's going to be a really important video. So that'll be on Friday. So I'll catch you all then. Who knows? I might be doing a video on the 6th or 7th, depending on what all happens in DC. But just keep in prayer and keep the faith. This is Mike with On Point Preparedness. God bless.